Good morning. Today is the final day of our conference, and it starts with the keynote session. And the chair of this session is Roman Samaryov. You're welcome, Roman.
Hello, everyone, and welcome in our final day of the conference. So our day now is starting from a very interesting keynote, and we have Oscar Pastor. Oscar Pastor is a full professor of Polytechnic University of Valencia, and he is director of Research Center on Software Production Methods. So Oscar is working on area of software engineering in common. I mean, it's not programming as is, but more conceptual level of it. And today's presentation will be devoted to a very interesting area. It's an intersection between bioinformatics and approaches which you can use for software engineering. So I think more details Oscar will give himself, and I think, I really hope that I presented it correct. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you very much for the invitation to the conference. I think that in these times, this topic of data-intensive domains, data management in general, is a really hot topic. It's a challenging topic. More and more work is going to be done, and I think that even socially speaking, everybody understands that data management is nowadays a very, very relevant, significant, and valuable work that requires solutions that are again significant, valuable, and plenty of utility, even for people, for citizens. Well, I was thinking about what to share with you, and of course, I think that the natural answer is to share what we are doing in the area of data-intensive domains applied to a big challenge, that is the understanding of the human genome, and how this challenge is something that is unusual in our history as humans, because it's something that could drastically change many points, many aspects that, again, socially speaking, have been there for centuries, and has not been under question, and now they are questionable. Because as I'm going to try to explain, the development of this domain of data-intensive management in the context of the genome understanding is really amazing, and is just a very, very interesting research topic. So this is why I choose this title, Conceptual Modeling Life Engineering, Facing Data-Intensive Domains Under a Common Perspective. And as you will see immediately, there is one word that is the first word of this title, that is conceptual modeling. Why conceptual modeling? Well, it is my strong scientific background, this passion for conceptual modeling, and this passion for conceptual modeling understood as pushing this capability that we human beings have of conceptualizing. And that is something essential that makes us different from any other species in our planet. So conceptual model is about conceptualizing, and conceptualizing is, again, it is what is making us do all the things that we do in the earth for the best and for the worst sometimes also. So, well, my dream is to push conceptual modeling in the direction of having this kind of world, plenty of conceptual modelers. And I will try during this talk to share with you what do I mean by this dream, a world, plenty of conceptual modelers. But first of all, let me just emphasize in these two main points that justifies why using conceptual modeling. Well, conceptual modeling for a better life, and conceptual modeling for understanding life. I think that understanding life is it is the problem where I am going to focus on, and understanding life would open, and is already opening, a set of possibilities that only a few years ago, or maybe a few decades ago, were absolutely unbelievable. In this direction, what I want to discuss with you is this idea of understanding the human genome is a so big challenge that could imply something that we could see as a change of species, another hominids that are not sapiens anymore, is what I want to comment in this way as a transition from an Homo sapiens to an Homo genius, to refer to it with one level. This is what I mean by that. I mean, if we see the history of the hominids, the different kind of homos that during centuries and millenniums have been present in our planet, we see that. And this is well, we should assume that we are now sapiens. So what do I mean by moving from this Homo sapiens to another homogeneous? What is the homogeneous? Well, the answer of this question of why from Homo sapiens to homogeneous is just exactly the one that I was introducing before, this capability of understanding and manipulating the genome. If you reflect about what this sentence is saying, capability of understanding and manipulating the genome, understanding and manipulating the genome, what it really means is to understand and manipulate life. And understand and manipulate life is something that has not been under our set of skills historically. This has been something related with wizards, with magics, with religion, but not with science, in the sense that we could manipulate life as we want. And this sounds as strong as it is. This is what this area of understanding the genome, manipulating all the data, these data intensive domains that the generation of more and more sequencing for individuals is generating, this huge amount of data, is giving us the chance of understanding why we are as we are, and manipulated. Especially manipulated sounds could sound very bad in some contexts, but if we focus on the clinical benefits, if we focus on medicine, everybody would accept that, well, if we have a cancer and we can fix where is the source problem of this disease, it would be great to correct it. It would be great to cure the person, that the patient that has this problem. So this is the main point. I think that we are talking about something that many years ago was just a matter of philosophy, who we are, how to prevent illnesses, why we are as we are. And now, scientifically speaking, we are being able for the first time in our history of answering these questions that, I repeat, only a few years ago or some decades ago were just a philosophical question. Well, it is important to understand what conceptual modeling is about, because conceptualizing, again, this is the essential capability that we need to reinforce. We have been working in this field for years. Our last works presented in the ER conference a couple of years ago was the reference framework for conceptual modeling, where basically, together with my colleagues, Lois Del Cambre, Steve Liddell, and Vida Storey, what we were doing was to try to characterizing not only conceptual modeling in particular, but conceptual modeling research in general, providing a framework that you can see here, where we determine what is the context of the conceptual modeling task, and we just focus on what language is used for representing this conceptualization process that the conceptual model is, and what is the methodological part. These are the three dimensions that you can see here in the screen: the context, the language support of the modeling activity, and the methodological support in terms of tools, processes, and so on. Well, definitions that must be clear and inclusive can be seen here. A conceptual modeling language as a way of defining the constructs and the grammar of the language. Well, there are many conceptual modeling languages. I'm sure that you know most of them, the ER all the diagrams of UML, the ORM, the extensions of the ER, and many others, many more other languages in different contexts, different modeling contexts. But we have the language, and the conceptual model is the artifact that we write using a conceptual modeling language in any domain. You can read here that this could, I mean, any domain is okay. It could be car rental system, web e-commerce, hospitals, universities, and why not? The genome itself. The genome itself is the domain that we are interested in, and it is the domain that I will use in this talk. Well, together with the language and the artifact created with the language, we have always the scenario under consideration, the working context, and the activities that are involved with the conceptual modeling activity. A conceptual model can be defined in many ways. Well, there are many different approaches to do that. Just the last one, what I always have, you will see if you look at my references, there are three main professors that contributed clear definition. One is John Milopoulos, the other one is Professor Bernard Tohem, the other one was Professor Nicola Giorino. All of them are just providing definitions that are focusing on these three different aspects of conceptual modeling. Conceptual models as models of mental representations, conceptual models as artifacts, or conceptual models as the third option as social artifacts. But I mean, it is not easy to find just one definition of a conceptual modeling. I don't like to see that it's just my definition, but I think that what I want to emphasize with this perspective, I want to share with you what is the most important aspect of a conceptual model to me. And going back to this conceptualization, human capability, I think that the most important aspect of a conceptual model is to see it as the result of making explicit a conceptualization process that is normally implicit. It is in our brains, but we don't outsource it. We don't make it explicit. We don't put it into black over white to share with others the common understanding of a domain. So this is why I see a conceptual model as the result of making explicit a conceptualization process that is applied to a part of the world that is relevant for the conceptual modeler purpose. But okay, said that, let me go back to what I want to share with you. That is why conceptual modeling is so relevant and so necessary for managing intensive data domain correctly. Well, imagine that you read that. If I tell you that this is about a book, the book is about a solution to intuitive problems, and the solution is to allow computers to learn from experience and understanding the world in terms of a hierarchy of concepts, with each concept defined through its relation to simpler concepts. The hierarchy of concepts enables the computer to learn complicated concepts by building them out of simpler ones. Okay, imagine that I ask you now one question. What is this book about? And if you reflect about the answer, I want to believe that many of you would say, okay, it's about conceptual modeling. You are talking about conceptual modeling. It's a book about conceptual modeling. It is not the case. It's about deep learning. So deep learning, that is a very fashionable topic right now. In this book, that is now one of the most well-known references, with Philo is saying that, just this year edition is saying this, is sharing these ideas that are so close to what conceptual modeling mean. So deep learning has, in my honest opinion, a clearly strong conceptual modeling background. But not only deep learning, there are other disciplines as artificial intelligence, and particular what is called now explainable artificial intelligence, that is extremely closely related with conceptual models. If we want to provide explanation that clarifies why an algorithm, an AI algorithm, is doing something, we want to understand why the machine is doing what it is doing. Well, look at these 6 steps that Sylvie Sprengenberg in her book Explainable Artificial Intelligence is proposing. And if you look at these 6 steps, the first one is just conceptual modeling, is the most important one. Get a shared understanding of the domain. Getting a shared understanding of the domain should be the very first step that we apply when we are trying to understand why whatever software system is doing what it is doing. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about software engineering. We would be talking about software handicraft or something like that. Not a real engineering require a strong modeling effort as a very first step, where we delimit and we clarify what are the concepts that are going to be used and are going to guide the data representation and the data manipulation that we will make subsequently. Well, after that, we have the understanding of the task and selecting the right scope. We have to collect the right data, improving its quality. We must select the AI techniques that deliver results and that would generate the good explanations that we are interested in, being sure, guaranteeing that the system evolution is also taken into account. But again, the first point, as you can see, of explainable artificial intelligence is strictly and strongly conceptual modeling based. Well, this is why I share this dream, another dream. This is from my colleague Nicola Guerino from the Trento University, saying that an ontology-driven conceptual modeling system conceive as an extension of current tools. There are some cases we have been working on as this Integra Nova approach, but should provide ontological competence, linguistic competence, capability to reason and criticize the designer's choice, and also should provide the needed reusability and understandability. Okay, this is what we have done for years. We created in the information system domain what we have called the O method approach. O method was going from the problem space to the solution space through a conceptual model compilation idea. This is what we call conceptual modeling programming. Modeling as programming. Well, I was assisting with some of the people that is active in this conference, as Sergey and with Professor Torheim, to a workshop of modeling as programming that is just trying to put into practice all these ideas. And well, this is what we are interested in studying and analyzing for years. We have some interesting reference where we have this model-driven architecture. In practice, we try to explain our approach to generate software from conceptual models. But I don't want to talk about it right now. I want to talk about the future. What is next? What is a especially attractive domain, data-intensive domain, where we could apply our conceptual modeling experience and expertise. We were discussing this with my students a few years ago, and well, this is funny because it's me quite not so few years ago, some years ago, but we were already thinking in this idea of, instead of going from models to programs in the silicon perspective, in the programming perspective, applying model-driven to the genome understanding and problem, and to do something like the headline that you see in this slide, MDA, model-driven architecture in practice, from genome models to human beings. Well, and we started to explore this idea because, well, the answer were you. This is what we were thinking about. And when we started to join this more biomedical world, biotechnological, bioinformatics world, we saw that the idea was not at all disruptive. Was many people already doing this kind of work and thinking from this perspective. I just choose this reference from Drew Ending, the MIT, saying that a living organism is a computer or machine made up of genetic circuits in which DNA is the software that, of course, could be hacked. But look at this metaphor. I mean, this is the software that we humans have invented. This is the sequence of zeros and ones, and life is also a code. And this was the amazing idea. It's a program. We are programs that are executing not millions of zeros of ones, but millions of 4 different letters that are the nucleotides, what conforms a different execution model, but it's a program anyway, with an execution model that is for the first time in history very well known by us. Well, the connection to what we have been done in the past was very, very obvious for us. As you see in the upper part, that we have been working in compilers, so from programming languages to code, but we saw that there is already people working in biology that are just programming different biological components that have a code counterpart that is implementing what people are doing. Well, life in our planet is everything, not only us. Everything is life. I mean, a lemon, any small animal, a bacteria, even the coronavirus, everything is life, is based on DNA. We are already working from the food perspective, manipulating life, because we are creating, I don't know, for instance, melons without bones, or well, any kind of combinations that are in some way what we are already doing is manipulating life. I would like to ask you this question: what is the difference, technically speaking, of manipulating a lemon or manipulating a person? If we are talking about the genome itself, the technical problem is to understand the genome and to manipulate it. So I think that the social implication and the ethical implication of this thing are so strong that we are not aware yet of these consequences, because we are used to improve a melon is perfect for everybody, or to improve grapes and to eat grapes without bones is perfect. But what about doing that with persons? Imagine that only 1 year ago, one Chinese scientist was manipulating an embryo, a human embryo, with the intention of preventing it from suffering the AIDS disease. And he thought that it was a great idea, but the consequence, he's now in jail, because the ethical implications of manipulating an embryo without knowing exactly what are the implications of what is going to be modified in the rest of the embryo in terms of human capabilities is terrible. It's really terrible, because we don't know yet. We are not we have not yet a so strong knowledge to understand how to manipulate everything. But anyway, let me go further, because time is running fast. And this is exactly the model-driven perspective that I wanted to share with you. You see in blue what we are doing for years, going from conceptual models to code. Models as programs, as Professor Torgey was in the workshop that was running this last March, was the main topic, modeling for programming. But if we look at life, we could do exactly the same, modeling for programming, but in that case, modeling for creating life or for improving life, for the best and for the worst, because this is really dangerous. We have to be very, very aware of that. But this is the scientific perspective that is already happening. And let me show with you some very simple examples. So conceptual modeling, life engineering, data-intensive domains, information systems engineering, medicine of precision, genome data science, all these terms are, in my honest opinion, something that we are going to listen to more and more during the next years, probably during the next months already, because the news that this working area generates are just running continuously. Well, this is just to tell you that a conceptual schema of the human genome is the central motivation of our work. This has been obtained from our publication in the last 5 years, but you see that this genome information system, modeling genomics, conceptual human genome, these are the topics that we are focusing on from this data-intensive domain perspective, with the main objective of understanding the human genome. As a good example of, well, for this conference, I think that the example is perfect. There is no more data-intensive domain, in my opinion, that the domain conformed by the genome sequencing and the attempt to understand, to read this sequencing, these millions of letters in order to interpret what this book of life is really telling us. Let me now just share a very simple example. I do this game with my master students. There are master students on computer science, and I tell them, okay, you have this binary code, and you are master student. You should tell me, what is this about? What is this code? What is this sequence of zeros and ones saying? Of course, it's a tricky question because it's almost impossible. It's impossible to answer this question. But I tell them, okay, let me give you a clue. This is the result of compiling this instruction in assembler. That is, okay, add the values from the processor registers 3 and store the result in the register 8. Well, they don't know anyway, but some of them are able to infer that there is something related with an operation, but that is true. I mean, this is just the binary representation of something very simple. We write in the screen our program 3 plus 4, and we get this set of zeros and ones that is the one that are executed in practice. So look at this distinction between the representation level and the physical level. And this is what we do. This is what we have invented in software engineering after a lot of improvements and a lot of research. But let's move to the life engineering perspective. We have the same. Now we don't have zeros and ones. We have letters. But I could ask my students in biomedical engineering, what is this? What is this doing? And well, it's just a sequence of code, in that case, codons that synthesize amino acids, but it's just code. It's not binary code, it's quaternary code if you want to refer to it as this. But I tell, okay, this is amazing because this has a programming structure. There is even a start, a begin, and an end, start, stop. And each codon, each 3 letters are synthesizing an amino acid that all together process the protein that is generating an effect. But again, this instruction level, this assembler level, they are not able to tell me what is the instruction that we are writing here. Well, indeed, this is what we are saying. Color of eyes equal blue. So we have the instruction, the representation level, and the physical level. And this is just the same concept. I mean, we could infer programs, models, where we could do whatever we want to do, and we create the code that is doing what we want to do. This is what we are doing with food. As I told you, I told you before, this is not at all something that is not possible to do, because we are already doing that with other types of life. So this is the question, and this is what now is creating a very interesting working domain that I would like to summarize in this slide. Let me put all the slide together, where you see that there are two different scenarios here. On our left, we see the sequencing scenario. We have samples, we sequence our genome. Each person, each one of us could just sequence now, could go. There are many companies that do that. We make a sequencing as a task of our genome. And well, this process, this is what bioinformatics methods do very well. From the sample can be just a drop of blood or some saliva or some physical material, but from the sample, these next generation sequencing technologies are converting the sample into a file that throws some transformation at the end is, well, for instance, the BCF file is a well-known format that people are using in genome data science to infer information. This BCF is variant call file, is just reporting which variants we have in our genome with respect to, or taking as reference, a sequence of reference. Well, on the right, we have a kind of conceptual model, a conceptual schema. This is the data perspective. We have all the data, all the variants, for instance, that are related to a given disease. Imagine that we know that there are 20 variations in the genome that are related with one problem, the Alzheimer's disease. Well, I think that you can imagine that to check that if we design an information system, what we can do is to see if I sequence my genome, I have to know if I want to know if my genome has or has not the variants that this data oracle is just reporting as the variants that are bad for suffering any particular disease. This is what the term design of genome information system refers to. And there are tools, this is what we are developing, the GeneSlogMe, but there are tools that are just doing this new kind of genomic-based diagnosis. And this is what basically is done under the umbrella of the medicine of precision. Well, the thing is that we want to understand genomic data. We have now a sequence of reference, and we have the references of any patient. As I told you before, any of us may do the sequencing exercise. And with this, we have to detect if there is a variation and to interpret the variation. And interpreting the variation means that, okay, maybe this is just benign and no problem with it, or as for instance, the color of eyes, or could be the case that, well, it's a problem because it's giving us a bad news, a high probability of suffering a particular disease. Well, this is what most of the current, I wouldn't say that is research. There are companies doing already that is okay. This is the typical process. That is the practical application of what I'm telling you. We have a person, a patient that is providing a sample. Through the sequences exercise, well, the technology is providing the file with the variation that this person has with respect to a sequence of reference. Well, when we have, look at this is the result, the sample, the BCF file. With the BCF file, we have the variations that my genome, my sample has. We go to the genome databases, to this data oracle, and we classify those variations whose meaning is known, and those others whose meaning is still unknown. But with this variation that whose meaning is known, I can go further. I can just say, okay, we have detected, the algorithm has detected variation in your genome that has an interpretation. The interpretation is just justified using all the bibliographical reference that is explaining why this variation is associated to a given disease. And finally, this genomic report is just collecting those pathogenic phenotype variants. And well, with that, we have the information that is gathered in a report that can support the final clinical diagnosis. Well, I don't have, I think that there is much you can imagine that this is a very complex process with a lot of data implied that are tedious and repetitive to manage. There are no explicit methods to have final conclusions. You have to navigate through a lot of hyperlinks because there are a lot of data sources that are increasing. The number of new information is increasing day after day. All that is logically prone to human error. This is why, well, you have this image of the genome data chaos. There are so many genome data sources that at the end, well, this is a big problem. And well, I want to go to the end. Let me jump. I wanted to show you this slide where you have this genome information cloud, this mess of information. And well, what I wanted to insist in this talk that was the role of conceptual modeling, because it's just a way of trying to put a structure to clarify the semantics that would make possible to reach this objective of understanding the human genome. And let me finish the talk. I'm not going to enter into detail, just with these movies. I think it is funny because there are some movies that I saw only 10 years ago. Gattaca is a good example. To me, they were, when I saw them for the first time, science fiction movies. Now, if I do this exercise with my students, I don't see them as science fiction anymore. I think that most of the things that you see in these films are absolutely achievable. They will happen. I don't know when, because this will take time. But we are on the road to make these things happen. Another one that I saw with my nephews is a children's tale. It's Next Gen. It's a robot. And the robot has feelings because it has been programmed to have feelings. And it's very interesting that the history that is behind the movie is perfectly achievable also in a few years. So it's well, again, I wouldn't say that this is a science fiction movie. And well, I think that the most clear application of this information, if you use conceptual modeling, Imagine that you have people working with breast cancer, for instance, and they identify variations that are related to the disease, with where in which genes these variations are, what pathways are affected by that. But there is a treatment. There is a treatment for patients that have this problem. So it could be the case, and we are working in this idea now, that there are other phenotypes, for instance, the COVID-19, whose variation genes and pathways are detected. And if it is the case that there is a pathway in the COVID that is the same one, so the effect that is generated in the patient is the same, and there is a treatment for this disease, this treatment should also work for this other one. So this is a tremendously valuable result from the clinical perspective. And this is what, this is what I wanted to share with you. I don't want to say nothing else about our methods. Just going back to the end, I would like to conclude with this idea that the essential role of conceptual modeling in this problem that is an immense and challenging problem of understanding life is strongly required. This is why conceptual modeling in data-intensive domains, and in this particular data-intensive domain, is so important. Well, inventors have long dreamed of creating machines that think. This is what Woodfellow is stating in his deep learning book. But I think that we are there. I think we are now in the way of making this dream true. It all starts by agreeing on the meaning of the important concept in your domain. That is what I refer to also when I share with you this idea of explainable artificial intelligence. This is what we are doing for years, going from conceptual model to software program. That is the software engineering perspective. And well, I think that now the big challenge is to go from the genome conceptual models to the human beings. That is the challenge that I'm happy to share with you and to invite you to join as a consequence of my talk. Well, I will send my talk to the organizers, Alexander, and you will find here a set of references and more valuable information. And this is all for my part. Sorry, I'm a little 5 minutes late, but I am so happy sharing all these ideas that it's difficult to me to control the time.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And we actually have 5 minutes more for questions. Any questions? Actually, I have a few questions. So first question. If we are talking about conceptual modeling with software, we are talking about using some concepts with meaning, with real software, with real code. So we are combining from those concepts real software. But if you are talking about genome conceptual modeling, am I understand right that in that case we are talking about reverse engineering?
Well, it could be the case. I think that to answer your question, that is a very relevant one. Is well, look at we have a programming language. You mind that you have a program in Java and Python, and what is a model? It's a low level model, but it's a model that we transform into code and we execute. But well, in that case, the code is the model, because whatever we do is just in the programming language. If the model is the code, we have a conceptual model that is the high level conceptual programming itself. So if we are able to execute the model, as you say, we can go in the two directions. We can go from the model to the code. That is what we do through the compilation process. In this case, a model compilation process. This is the normal way. But as we know the rule, we could go back from the code to the model. So we could do also this reverse engineering exercise that we also could do we do normally when we go from the code to the part of the program that is the one that is generating this code. So I think that the answer to your question, if I have well understood it, is yes. I mean, we can do this kind of reverse engineering, but the important thing in any case is to make true this statement that instead of being true that the code is the model, is to make true the opposite, that is the model is the code. And so when we are modeling, we are programming, and we have perfectly connected both the model and the code in the two directions. Is that answering your question?
Thank you. But actually, I asked about some other aspects. So if you're talking about biological systems, how can be sure that previously detected sequence of genome is really corresponds to some specific concept?
Well, imagine that you ask me, okay, how would we be sure that the sequence of the zeros and ones, the program, the lower level program, is the representation of the programming language that I have written? Well, we know that because we are building that. When we build a program, by definition, when we write something, the sequence of zeros and ones is the consequence of that. So now with our normal life, you are right, it's almost impossible. But if we create artificial life, if we create robots, we are programming them. When we are programming them, if we have the knowledge of what we are writing in the program is what the robot is going to do, we are programming, we are creating programs. And in that way, we are sure by definition, because we know the set of mappings that are connecting the code that we are writing with the behavior that the program, that in this case would be, for instance, one robot, is going to have.
Yeah, thank you. I completely agree with scientific systems. If you are creating some software or we are programming some robot, yeah, we can be sure that what we are doing. But if we are doing reverse engineering from biological organism, for example, so actually we have two approaches. We can create something like a synthetic life, or we can analyze real organism, for example, as you mentioned, to prevent cancer.
Yeah. I mean, of course, this is a very hard problem. What we can do right now is what people are doing is just imagine, we don't know. We have the code and we don't know, we have the genome and we don't know what is this genome doing. But if we take, for instance, imagine there are a lot of experiments like this one. Imagine that you want to understand the genomic causes, the genomic rules of Alzheimer, as an example. What do we do? Because we have no idea from the beginning. We look at the code and we have no idea. Well, we take, for instance, 200 people that have a severe Alzheimer's state, and 200 people without, so people that are completely healthy. When we sequence the genomes, we see that there are differences in the code. So from these differences, we can infer that, okay, let's look, if there is this variation here in this chromosome, all these people that have the problem have this variation. So we can infer that this code is related to this problem because experimentally, empirically, we are detecting that. So what is true is that we are learning now step by step, very few amounts of information that tell us what is the explanation of this code that, well, we have in our bodies, but we don't know exactly why. We don't know why we are becoming older. What is wrong in our body that makes us become older and older every day? Could we stop this process? Well, maybe, as you say, the only way to discover that is to compare the genome of young and old people and to try to infer which are the problems. People are just making hypotheses of the length of the telomeres, that are some chromosomical part. But if I understood you, I think that the question now to try to understand the code, what the code is doing, the only way that we can follow is to compare different individuals with some of them healthy, some of them unhealthy, and to try to infer where are the differences in the code to go further determining, delimiting what are the pieces of code that we should correct.
Okay, thank you. And one short question. So if you are talking about real systems, for example, about robot, we have multiple levels of presentation of concepts. We have hardware level, we have software, we have different levels of software, like operational system, like application level. And we have different languages. But if you are talking about a biological approach and conceptual modeling for genome, can we talk about a universal language for representing all the levels for real life, for real organism?
Can you repeat the question, please?
So see, if we are talking about real life, can we talk about some universal language which we can use for representing all the concepts for all the life?
Well, we have to explore that. But as life is following in our planet a common structure, a common pattern, that is the execution model of the DNA, RNA, the transcription, translation, and so on. As the execution model is common for every species, from a bacteria or a virus till us, a big mammal, the answer should be yes. I think that when we are talking about conceptual modeling of life, And when we are talking about a conceptual model of the genome, we are in the way of trying to provide such a universal language where the mechanisms that characterize life in our planet should be explicitly represented. And well, we could have a language that is just using these conceptual representations to accomplish any kind of objective related to different types of life, or even that sounds also amazing, inventing new possibilities of life. Why not?
Okay. Thank you very much. Actually,
may I ask one question?
Yeah.
Oscar, if we consider genome conceptual models, are they more descriptive or predictive? And which is more important?
Well, I think that I would say, thanks for the question, I would say that by definition is descriptive, because it is just following this goal of providing a shared understanding of the domain. But at the same time, once the descriptive part is fulfilled, it could be also used for inferring new information. So you can use it for prescribing new things, because when you understand these connections, you can, why not, invent new connection, or we can adapt or change. So I think that your question would be, the answer to your question could be both are possible, but first it must be descriptive, and we must understand, we must reach this shared understanding of the domain. And while we have this knowledge and we understand everything well, we can go further. And we can start to use it in a prescriptive way. Why not? Because understanding, I can do more things.
Okay. So,
okay, thank you, everybody. I will be happy to answer any curiosity or attend any curiosity by email without any problem. And I will send you the slides also to let them be shared with all the audience.
okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. It was very interesting.
Thank you very much.
Well, and in 5 minutes, we will have the next session number 10, and the chair of this session is Boris Dobrov, and the starting time of this session is 11:50.